Hey, Kingdom Dream Chasers, it's Gail Root back with you. I want to forgive, honestly, since I started this podcast, I think last week was the first time I didn't have a podcast drop. And I would just want to ask for your grace. I know some of you are like, well, I didn't even notice. So don't worry about it, Gail. But I notice, and my passion as a kingdom entrepreneur is to be consistent for my audience so that they know that I care for them. I'm committed to them. I'm passionate. And consistency means that we're willing to overcome some stuff, right? Because life happens and life has been happening lately. And last week, I just had to give myself grace. And it was really, really hard. But I just had to give myself grace. And so in the pause of last week, God has been working on a series, and it's around sales. And it is so mind blowing to me how often, when I work with clients and we get down to some root issues, at the heart of it are mindsets about success, money, sales, identity. And what's so important about getting to these issues is it doesn't matter how hard you work, how hard you try, what you invest in, what you learn. These internal things will be limiting you if you don't deal with them. So, what I want you to hear more than anything else is my heart. I believe that God, I believe you wouldn't be listening to this if God hadn't called you to entrepreneurship. And if he's called you to entrepreneurship, then he's got very specific ideas about where he's taking you. And so when we have internal conflicts about that direction, everything he's trying to move us into, it's going to get thwarted. We're going to feel that proverbial wall or that proverbial ceiling that we seem to just keep hitting. And what happens is it build our discouragement builds. We can fall into self pity. We can fall into excuses. And please notice I'm using the word we here because I'm right there with you. At every level you go in your business, you're going to be met again with a new chance to double down and commit on who does God really say I am. So let me pull back for a moment here. There's three big conversations I'd like to have with you over the next few weeks. And even though sales is at the heart of the conversation for the kingdom entrepreneur, what is sales? What does it look like? What is a healthy view of sales from a kingdom perspective? How do I get better at sales from a kingdom perspective? How do I shed off a lot of what I've picked up along the way about what I think sales might be and those mindsets that are keeping me from um, a true kingdom perspective of sales. But before we go there, there's this issue around identity because and so let me just stay broad for a second. So, identity. And what do I mean by identity? So, the call on my life, the purpose on my life, the assignment on my life. What do I believe at this stage? So my children are raised, we're empty nesters. What do I believe God's really calling me into? Is he calling me to entrepreneurship? Is he calling me to serve? Who's he calling me to serve? What ways has he equipped me and provided for me so that I could help someone else find a solution to something that would give them a level of freedom that I've probably already experienced. And he didn't just give that to me to bless me, although he did. He wanted me that a gratitude to be born up in me from that blessing that would make me want to pour out. Now, here's where things get interesting. If God's called me to that purpose, he's called me to that assignment. His intention is always been that I would partner with him in it, that I would do it with him, not for him, not for him. He doesn't need me to do anything for him. What he wants by his design, by his nature, by his love, by his design for us to be in relationship, for us to be guided and comforted and provided for by him, and to use the gifts that he's given us, but in partnership with him. He wants to do it with us. So the call that he has, the assignment that he has, the purpose that he has for us is too big for us. And what happens is for the believer, I love Jesus. I read the Bible. I go to church. I sometimes we operate apart from Him, and I believe it's often because we're afraid of what's going to happen to me if I draw closer to God. I don't know about you, but I lived there for a really long time. I loved Him. I worshiped Him. I prayed to Him, but I was afraid to draw near. And I made excuses. I'm just too busy. I don't have the time. I already did that devotional. I'm going to say, I'll listen to some praise music on the way to church. I'll listen to praise music in the car today. I made excuses for not sitting in His presence, not being still in His presence, not making space for Him to actually speak into my life, my heart, to transform me, to transform my thoughts. And so I was afraid. When I really broke down why, Gail, I was afraid of honestly, I thought it would be too, I would have to live with a level of, I made up a story. Please hear me. I was making up a story that I didn't even know I was making up. And the story I was making up was drawing closer to Jesus was going to mean that I was going to have to live some kind of a sacrificial, I was going to have to give up too much that I loved. I was going to have to give up um it was going to be too hard. Obedience was going to be too hard. Discipline was going to be too hard. I was going to fail. I wasn't going to do it well, and and my life was going to change. I was going to change. What if the people around me wouldn't even like me or love me anymore? Oh, oh yeah. Thought all those things, and so as an entrepreneur, as a kingdom entrepreneur, I had to get really clear at who is God? What is his nature? What is it? Why did Jesus come? To bring us into relationship, to bring heaven to earth. And we are a part of that plan. And so if I'm trying to accept the call, the assignment, the purpose of my life, but I'm afraid to draw close to him. What's happening is I'm operating in self-reliance. I see the vision that he's given me, I see the call that he's given me, but I'm operating in that self-reliance because I'm afraid to draw close to him and I don't even realize this is happening. So what happens? What's the fruit of that? Oh, discouragement, doubt, fear, worry, lack. I'm not enough. I got to try harder. I'm not equipped for this. What was I thinking? And it is anxiety, performance anxiety, fear of what other people are going to think, fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, living in that place. It is, I've been there a long time. And when you draw near to who he is, all right, let me go back because there's a supernatural, if God has called us to it, it isn't humanly possible to walk it all out by design. Remember, he designed it so that we would do it in partnership. We would do it together. He, me, and him together. That is his design, to partner with him, to co-create, to do it with him. And so if I'm trying to do it on my own, I'm going to feel all of those horrible things. And that cycle is just going to continue and continue and continue until, quite frankly, for many of us, we lose our faith because we're like, God, where are you? And he's like, I'm right here. You just won't come to me. You won't come rest in me. You won't come live in me. You won't come let me guide you, Gail, every day, whispering in your ear, holding you, comforting you, providing for you the wisdom, the blueprints, the strategies, the ideas. So when we do it with him, it requires a new mindset, a new alignment, a daily dying to self and saying, God, this is about what you want to do with me and through me. And I am here. I am here and I will take action today, but I'll do it from a place of rest and trust. So, that whole big piece on identity, and we're going to dive into that more from a perspective of an entrepreneur. And when you're trying to sell someone something, when you have a business and God's called you to a for-profit business, because that's by definition, if it's either a hobby and it doesn't have a profit and you don't care because it's a hobby. You spend some money, you have some enjoyment from that, and it was never intended to make money. It's a hobby. But if you are saying you have a business, it is a for-profit business. And if you're doing it with God, then it's going to be successful because anything you do with him, if you're doing it with him, will be successful. Now, what that success will look like is going to be different for every single one of us. All right. Some of the success depends on our surrender. Some of the success depends on our obedience, our discipline. Some of the success depends on God's favor, his intention, his timing. And some of the success we come to see, it might be more about maybe he brought us into this because he needed to heal us in an even different area of our life. So it doesn't, maybe we were pursuing financial success, but we found success somewhere else in our life that ended up being far more valuable. So for each of us, that success is going to look different, but make no mistake about it. If you're doing it with him, it will be successful because that's who he is. That's who he is. So we walk as a daughter of the king, we work from rest. And as we do that, when we start looking at sales, having a product or an opportunity for someone else, a solution for someone else, and selling them that opportunity, we take on a whole new perspective because we're not coming from, remember that first place that I talked about, that self-righteous or self-focused is really what I'm trying to say, that self-focused place of I've got to hustle, I've got to perform, I've got to make this work, I've got to get this sale. And so we come from a place that is a burden, and it's like it emits itself. So we're going to be dealing with that identity. Because if I'm in the wrong place in my identity, when it comes time to have a conversation about a sales transaction and I'm in that place, I'm lost. It's lost. All right. So it's crucial to deal with that. The second area we're going to really get into are mindsets around money and success. Guess what I heard? There was a woman today that I had the pleasure of being in her company, and she was a pastor for 18 years. So this is clearly a woman who loves the Lord and knows his word. Okay. And she has built hundreds of millions of dollars online. All right. They literally, when she started, not that very long ago, they lived in an apartment with a couple kids, and her husband was driving an Uber driver. Okay. Um, and so now hundreds of millions, and not just 100 million, hundreds of millions of dollars later, she actually used the phrase today, and I'm going to look, I want to quote it exactly because it kind of blew me away when I knew I was going to be having this conversation today and recording this. She actually said that, oh my goodness, Lord, please help me find it faster. Um, it was something, no, I don't, I want to quote it exactly. I want to quote it exactly. Ah, got it. Thank you, Jesus. My most favorite word in the, she said, one of my most favorite words in the English language is money. Now, at first, I had this uneasiness. I don't know about you, but I'm guessing a number of you listening feel really uncomfortable about that statement. One of my most favorite words in the English language, money. But what it reveals, if you're feeling bristled by that, and I was too, it, I had to ask, Lord, why am I feeling bristled about that? Because I do believe with all my heart that money is just a tool. It is like a hammer. If she would have said, one of my most favorite words in the English language is a hammer, I would have been nothing but curious about why she thought that way and felt that way. I would have had no emotional response. But because I have been fed lies about money and I have taken on lies about money through movies, films, church, wrong doctrines, beliefs, I have put an emotional assignment around what I think money should look like, smell like, be like, act like inside of me. So that is, and if you are an entrepreneur and you want to be have a successful business, a profitable business, and you've got issues around money, when it comes time for you to sell something, you're shackled. Please hear me. You're shackled. You're shackling yourself. And so that statement, ask yourself, go to the Lord, journal about it, and we're going to dig into it much more in a couple weeks. Another word that's a big word too, is success. Many Christian women that I work with, they have a really hard time believing that it's okay, that they somehow have permission from God to want to be successful. And that internal conflict with being in the marketplace, having a business, feeling you're called to business, kingdom business, wanting to make an impact, and yet internally feeling that desiring success is somehow going to disappoint God. That internal battle raging will prevent you again and again and again from the success that God is wanting for you, calling you to, because your success impacts so many others. All right. And then finally, finally we will get into a deeper discussion around sales. What is it, what does it look like in the kingdom to be selling? I like to think of it this way. And I know this might make some of you uncomfortable, but just imagine with me for a moment. Imagine with me for a moment that we got to sit down next to Jesus and say, Jesus, you've put me in business, and in business, you got to sell something. And so I want to imagine, Lord, that everything I do, from every conversation I have with potential clients, that I am edifying you, and that every sales transaction I have, that it brings joy to your face, that you believe, Jesus, that my heart is in the right place, and that I am selling something that I believe with my whole heart is going to intimately impact this woman that I get the pleasure and honor of working with, as I get to draw her closer to you and closer to the true fulfillment that you're calling her into in her life. And that not only am I going to prosper because of my investment, and then receiving the income from her, not only is that going to prosper me and my family, not only am I going to be able to pour out to others because of that, but she's going to prosper. She's going to be impacted. And so it's this beautiful win-win. And so we're going to dive deeper into that conversation around what does it look like to have a thriving, healthy kingdom mindset when it comes to sales and selling. Because I'm going to tell you right now what is not healthy. I don't wanna be salesy. I don't wanna be pushy. I don't wanna be perceived as, there's nothing healthy about those mindsets. And I love you too much to not tell you the truth. And you need to know that right now. It's kind of like if I was going to do a little diagnostic of you, I'm a doctor and I'm going to diagnose what's going on with you because you have an unhealthy business. And I would come in right away and we'd start talking about, what do you think about money? What do you think about sales? What do you think about success? And I would be able to diagnose right away, this is like a cancer in you, this belief, and it can be pervasive and it affects your emotions. It affects your daily willingness to take action. It causes you to hide. It causes you to withdraw. Here are all these wonderful opportunities and people and collaborations and things and ways that you can be serving, and you're holding back. So we're going to have uh, a big conversation around that. But I'm praying that you're still listening, because I have a big ask, and I don't do this very often. But I want to hear from you. So I've given you a general framework about what the next 3 weeks in this series about sales from a kingdom perspective, and dealing with the identity issues, the mindset issues, and the real tangible things about sales from a kingdom perspective, and giving you some wonderful tools to that you can use right away that are going to impact and shift you. However, I want to hear from you. What do you need right now when it comes to sales? What are your biggest hangups when it comes to sales? When it comes time to actually have the conversation, what are the anxious feelings that are coming up? What are the fears? What do you think is going to happen? And if you could wave a magic wand and make it go away, what would that look like? What would you want? What could I give you right that would make all of that ick about sales go away? I'd love to hear from you.